Welcome to Castles and Legends. In our final video from our trip to the southeast, we're visiting Canterbury Cathedral. It is the oldest cathedral built in England. Its origins can be traced back as far as 597. It is the seat of the Archbishop of Canterbury, the spiritual head of the Church of England. It held immense significance as one of the most popular pilgrimage destinations in medieval England after the bloody murder of Thomas Becket. Over the centuries, the cathedral has been witness to an astonishing array of momentous moments throughout history. In 596, St. Augustine landed on British shores, sent from Rome by Pope Gregory the Great. His task was to convert the pagan people to Christianity. In 597, following Augustine's successful conversion to Christianity of King Ethelbert, he founded Canterbury Cathedral, dedicating it to Jesus Christ. Augustine built the cathedral on top of an earlier Roman road, which he may have thought would give the cathedral more stability. In the spring of 1002, Anglo-Saxon King Ethelred the Unready and Emma of Normandy were married at Canterbury Cathedral. In 1011, the cathedral was badly damaged from Viking raids, and the Archbishop Alberge was taken hostage. He was murdered by his captors in 1012, making him the first of 5 martyred Archbishops of Canterbury. Just after the Norman conquest of England in 1066, a terrible fire broke out at the cathedral, completely destroying it. In 1070, William the Conqueror appointed his trusted friend Lanfranc as Archbishop of Canterbury. Lanfranc set about rebuilding the cathedral based on a design similar to his church in Normandy using French limestone. The new structure was situated approximately 5 metres to the south of its predecessor and was designed as a cruciform structure. It featured an aisle-flanked nave with a total of 9 bays, twin towers at the western facade, transepts without aisles but equipped with apsidal chapels, a modest crossing tower, and a compact choir section culminating in 3 apses. When viewed from above, you can clearly see the building's structure is in the shape of a cross. It took Lanfranc 7 years to rebuild the cathedral, whose size and splendour far exceeded the one it had replaced. The interior of the cathedral was also noted as being richly decorated with paintings and stained glass windows. Although Lanfranc had a magnificent cathedral, he was still unsatisfied. He wanted to be the undisputed leader of England's church. His rival to this position was the Archbishop of York, Thomas Becket, also a friend of King William. When appointing the archbishops, William failed to make clear who would ultimately be in charge. Both archbishops petitioned the Pope, but he instructed William to settle the matter. The Accord of Winchester was drawn up, concluding that Archbishop Lanfranc was more superior, but the document could be interpreted as specific to Lanfranc being the more superior and not his predecessors. When Lanfranc died in 1089, Thomas claimed the agreement was ended. It took until 1352 for the disagreement to be resolved, when the Pope designated the Archbishop of York the Primate of England and the Archbishop of Canterbury the Primate of all England, concluding the Archbishop of Canterbury is the senior Archbishop. In 1174, a fire broke out in nearby cottages, and embers passed in the breeze to the cathedral's roof, which quickly spread to the cathedral's interior. The most holy eastern end of the cathedral was completely destroyed. The rebuilding of the cathedral was significantly funded by the substantial income generated from pilgrims who flocked to Canterbury. However, the story behind why pilgrims chose Canterbury as their preferred destination has its own intriguing narrative. In the most holy of places, a brutal murder took place on Tuesday, the 29th of December 1170. We need to look a little further back to understand the events that led to this tragedy. Thomas Becket was a close friend of King Henry II, who had appointed him Chancellor of England. When the position of Archbishop of Canterbury became vacant, Henry was very enthusiastic to appoint Becket into the role while continuing his existing role of Chancellor. Henry thought that with his close friend in this dual appointment, the Crown would be able to exercise a greater authority over the Church. Becket did not share his friend's ideas. He resigned his position of Chancellor and instead devoted his time and lifestyle to the Church. Thomas opposed laws that Henry put forward curbing powers of the Church, and this incited a bitter feud. The feud between Becket and King Henry II escalated over time, and on one evening Henry was overheard angrily exclaiming, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent, troublesome priest?" 4 of Henry's knights took this outburst literally and set off on a mission to fulfill their king's wishes. The 4 knights arrived at Canterbury and burst into the cathedral, demanding to know where the traitor Thomas Becket was. Monks surrounded Becket to protect him, but Becket went forward through them announcing, "I am he, and I am not a traitor to the king. I am just a priest. What do you want?" There was a long moment of silence, but the knights soon recomposed themselves and without hesitation struck Becket down gruesomely. The murder shocked not only England, but the entirety of Europe, and King Henry II was worried about what repercussions this might have upon himself. Whether Henry really felt remorse or not for the murder that he claimed not to have sanctioned will never be known. Either way, Henry knew he had to appear remorseful, and did so in a very public way. He walked to Canterbury Cathedral barefoot, and upon his arrival he allowed the monks to whip him on the back. Right after Becket's death, reports of miracles associated with his tomb started to emerge, which encouraged an influx of pilgrims to Canterbury. In 1173, Becket was made a saint. Pilgrims flocked to the cathedral, which created a substantial income. When a significant fire struck the church in the early 1170s, which we previously mentioned, it presented an opportunity to reconstruct and transform the cathedral into a suitable shrine to honour the recently martyred Becket. The task of rebuilding was placed in the hands of William of Sens, who brought with him expertise in the emerging French architectural style now known as Gothic. In 1179, a tragic accident occurred when William fell from scaffolding above the high altar. Some report that he died, and others that he survived long enough to return to his homeland, France. Whichever is true, he had to retire from the project and let his assistant complete the work, William the English. In the 1180s, the Trinity Chapel was added, creating a further magnificent shrine to house relics related to the St. Thomas Becket, including the top of his skull, which was struck off during his assassination. Becket's remains were laid in the cathedral crypt until 1220. Other significant people to have been buried at the cathedral include Edward the Black Prince and King Henry IV. In 1509, King Henry VIII was crowned King of England, but during his reign, the whole church would undergo a dramatic transformation. After over 20 years of marriage to Catherine of Aragon, but without a male heir, he set his sights on Anne Boleyn. The Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine, so Henry appointed his friend Thomas Cranmer as Archbishop of Canterbury, and he willingly annulled the marriage. The Pope was outraged, but Cranmer only used this situation to persuade Henry that he should not be beholden to Rome in his own kingdom, and the path was set. On November the 28th, 1534, the Act of Supremacy was officially enacted, establishing the English king as the supreme head of the Church of England. With this act, Henry VIII's authority within the Church surpassed any earthly power, placing him in a position second only to God himself. In 1538, Henry began the dissolution of the monasteries. He declared Thomas Becket a traitor to the crown. His tomb and shrine were smashed to pieces. Today, a simple candle marks where the tomb once stood. Archbishop Cranmer remained loyal to Henry. After Anne Boleyn failed to produce a male heir, it was he who again annulled Henry's marriage, this time on the grounds of adultery. Anne was beheaded a few days later, making her the first English queen to be executed. Archbishop Cranmer's loyalty to Henry never wavered. He oversaw the end of 2 more of Henry's marriages. Tides changed after Henry's death, and the Catholic Mary seized the throne. Mary rounded up many Protestants and had them executed. Cranmer was sentenced to death and burned at the stake following 2 years of torture at the Tower of London. Cranmer had been forced to sign a confession renouncing his Protestant faith, but when he was put upon the burning stake, he had one last act of defiance left. He thrust his hand into the heart of the flames and proclaimed, "This hand hath offended," renouncing his confession just before the flames engulfed him. After Mary I, the crown went to her half-sister, Elizabeth I, and England's faith went back to being Protestant. Canterbury Cathedral once again became a place of worship and the seat of the head of the Church of England. Canterbury Cathedral enjoyed centuries of quiet worship until the onset of World War II. During the war, Hitler ordered his air force to target places of cultural significance, placing Canterbury high on the list. On the 1st of June 1942, relentless waves of German heavy bombers swept over Canterbury. A courageous team of volunteers, known as fire watchers, played a vital role during air raids. When the air raid sirens sounded, these individuals fearlessly ascended to the cathedral's roof and took direct action to dislodge any explosives dropped from the sky, kicking them to the ground. Other fire watchers would then work to swiftly extinguish the devices. These heroic efforts helped protect the cathedral during the war. Canterbury Cathedral is huge. It covers over 7,500 square metres. The nave is 525 feet long and the arch ceiling almost 85 feet high. It costs approximately a whopping £18,500 per day to upkeep. It is a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site with over 1 million visitors a year. Whether you are religious or not, the magnificence and size of Canterbury Cathedral leaves you in awe. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed our video. If you have, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to our channel. We hope to see you again very soon.